Hello, I am Levi Stevens and I am in Group 5. My group's foundation was privilege and power. With this project, I had several thoughts about different theories and paradigms that could affect privilege and power. I ended up picking what I think is most likely to happen in America. My paradigm was functionalism. Functionalism states in its simplest terms, when something in society doesn't function, the integrated parts of society will shift around the broken part of society to fix it peacefully. I also chose for my theory to be Merton's theory of manifest and latent function. This theory states that there are intended parts of society, and there is also unintended or manifest and latent functions. I connected my paradigm and theory to the foundation of power and privilege by focusing on the courts and how the courts are meant to function versus how they really function. In my research for my paper, I learned lots of different functions of the courts and how the courts can treat people differently based on race, gender, religion, and class. I also learned diverse ways in which we could peacefully reform and as a society shift to fix the broken parts of the court system. In the foundation of power and privilege, Matthew Clare discusses what he learned while doing a study on courts about how clients get treated differently based on their achieved and ascribed statuses. For example, Clare discusses how two people he had followed had vastly different interactions in the court. A white woman was described by her attorney as being an easy case because she was a pretty white girl and the judge would go easy on her. While an African American woman's attorney couldn't even identify her in a group of people and they had met before. And she returned to Matthew Clare saying, "That's my racist ass attorney." These comments about judges and attorneys got me thinking about what can we do to fix how the system works. I started researching different reform movements and ways we can reform the courts, keeping in mind functionalism and what the manifest and latent functions of the court are. It is important to remember that the courts and criminal justice are important parts of our society, but there's ways we can reform them to function better for our society. It is also important to detail what are the intended functions of the court. Courts show society's efforts to protect individual liberties, be fair and just, limit the government's power, sentence those who have committed crimes, prevent crimes, and show what society considers wrongful behavior. Most Americans would agree these are good values to uphold within our society. However, from these intended functions of the court, there are unintended or latent functions, such as injustice, self interest, partisan advantage, as well as racism, classism, gender discrimination. There is also unbalanced relationships between criminal justice officials and civilians. In my research, I found several different ways we can reform the court. The one I learned the most about and was most shocked by was the distinction between civil court and criminal court and how it's being used as a racist and classist tool to separate legal actions between white Americans and African Americans, as well as poor Americans and wealthy Americans. This is done by sending the same crime to different courts. So a domestic abuse case in a poor neighborhood is statistically more likely to be sent to criminal court, while the same exact abuse case in a rich neighborhood is more likely to be sent to civil court. The ways we can reform this is by changing the structure of how these courts work and how you flow through the criminal justice system, making it so that these two courts, there is defined crimes in which you go either to criminal court or civil court. And there isn't this gray area for judges to use it as a tool for classist and racist reasons. Another reform we can do is term limit. Term limiting sets an amount of time a judge can be a judge. For example, our president has a term limit. Each term is 4 years with a max of 8 years in being president. This helps control things in the court all the way up to the Supreme Court. So this limits things such as unjust partisan advantage and self-interest. So stopping people from doing things that would only benefit them, as well as stopping them from only doing things that would help their political party. Thomas Jefferson said his enemies were fleeing to the judiciary treating it as a stronghold in which they could do they could rule no matter what people wanted, meaning that a minority had the power to oppress the majority, as there's no way to remove them or make them work in the interest of the people. Term limiting also helps amend the parts of the foundation that wasn't accounted for by the founding fathers. The founding fathers, when America was born, the life expectancy was 36.5 years old. Since then, it has drastically shot up to 78.7 years old. This means that a single judge could potentially have 72 or more years than a judge when America started. This is a problem because it allows people to stay in the courts for significantly longer and have significantly more power, and allows them to do more things in their own interest or their party's interest than America as a whole. These are just a few ways I found that we could reform the latent functions of the court system peacefully and within the bounds of functionalism. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you learned something new. Have a good day.